Now, more South Africans are using credit to meet their monthly expenses. A new report by research firm 8020 shows that some 800,000 people took on credit in the fourth quarter, up from 600,000 last year. Now, the new entrants took out more than 9 billion rand in new loans, the highest in more than 2 years, while credit card balances increased by 12% to 25 billion rand. The research firm says this brings the total credit active population surveyed to about 18 million people, with total loan balances of 2.3 trillion rand. What's more concerning, though, is the 16% increase in those consumers who missed their monthly loan repayments. Defaults were mostly recorded for credit cards, home loans, and vehicle and asset loans. For more on this credit data, we're now joined by Andrew Fulkens, the director at research firm 8020. Welcome to Newsroom, Andrew.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Now, looking at and analyzing this particular data, were you able to track how consumers were spending the loans that they were taking out?
That's always a very hard thing. I mean, if you get a credit card, you get credit card debt, but it's very hard to track back exactly what they're buying. But obviously, with like a home loan, you're buying a house, and with a car loan, you're buying a car. But yeah, unsecured and credit card, it's hard to figure it out. But one of the things we can see, just with the amount of defaults and the ballooning credit balances, is people must be using it for more and more day-to-day purchases like food and perhaps school clothing, things like that.
Now, new credit consumers have increased by some 800,000 over the period. Has the number surged because we've seen interest rates go up in the country and the cost of living really get difficult for consumers?
Yeah, once again, I mean, we can only hypothesize on these things. We develop hypotheses and then test them over time to try and see what's actually happening. But yeah, there was quite a surge in new entrants into the credit market. One of the hypotheses is they're taking on this credit, certainly credit card and unsecured, in order to pay for those day-to-day food and clothing purchases. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, in a capitalist economy, you want people to be buying stuff. You want people to be driving the economy through purchases, and that we are seeing an increased appetite for credit can be seen as a good thing. One of the challenges we have noticed with those 800,000, though, is the quality of that sort of, it's called thin file clients, is not terribly good. I mean, you've got 1 million people coming in every year just because they've turned 18 and they can now get credit. But the people that didn't get credit when they're 18 tend to be younger, poorer, unmarried, and some of the higher risk individuals in South Africa.
And that would be a particular risk, given that it would create a risk bubble. Those that can't repay their loans then affect some of the banks that we have in the country. Those taking credit cards and loans, are you finding that they're also trying to supplement those earnings every month that's not particularly reaching the end of the month?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's talking about side hustles and what else people are doing just to make ends meet, how they're saving money in terms of the purchases, trading down in terms of maybe luxury goods to less luxury goods, or even brand names to no-name brands. But also, how are they using that great entrepreneurial spirit of South Africa in order to come up with other ways of generating revenue and income. I'm certainly seeing that in the research.
And Andrew, it seems with some credit-active consumers, they've bitten off more than they can chew. Can you take us through the numbers of those that are defaulting on their loans?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the big concern. We do this credit stress report every quarter, and you have to realize this is Q4 data, so it's now getting on sort of like 3 months old, but that's just the lag in the data that did come out and can be analyzed. But what we noticed in Q3 was it certainly seemed to be a very middle-class problem, middle class trying to live that lifestyle of a car and a house, and they were coming under pressure. But what we've noticed now is with the long-term debt, the secured debt, so your vehicle asset finance and your home loans, it takes a while for those defaults to work their way into the system, because the banks don't want you to default on these loans. They often try to help you, extend payments or come up with some solution. But we're noticing that what's happened now is we're seeing those defaults in those secured loans at the upper end of the income. So the segment that we call the heavy hitters, which is the wealthiest 5% of South Africa's, we're noticing that they've had an increase in new defaults. So I need to be clear on this. We measure the rate of new defaults. So that's the proportion of current loan balances that went to default during this quarter, and then we the change in that quarter on quarter. So when we say, heavy hitters, 24% increase in home loans going into default, it's not 24% of home loans going into default. It's a 24% increase. It's still sitting at about, 1 to 2%. But that increase is a early warning of trauma that might come out in the next quarters. But yeah, we're certainly seeing with the heavy hitters, 24% increase in home loan defaults, newly in default, 30% increase in vehicle asset finance, 21% in credit cards. And this is the wealthiest South Africans, not the mass credit or the middle class.
Quite concerning that. What Andrew Fulkens, the director at 1820, talking about the number of South Africans that have taken up credit to supplement their incomes.